For more analysis, we're joined from New York by Irina Tuskerman, the political researcher. Welcome to In Focus. Ms. Tuskerman, Foreign Minister Lavrov declared that any European troop deployment in Ukraine after a settlement would be foreign intervention. What does this reveal about Russia's strategic fears, and how does it shape the diplomatic space Trump is trying to create?
Question is that Russia has still views Ukraine as its own sphere of influence, as opposed to an independent sovereign country that has a right to collaborate in defense and local matters and security matters with anyone in the world. Now, that is a strategic pivot from Putin's rhetoric circa 2011-2012, where he had no with Ukraine even joining NATO and collaborating on with any defense bloc or alliance, and he is on record as saying that. So what has changed? Has NATO suddenly become a real threat to Russia? Not at all. Since that time, even when Russia engaged in actions such as the Crimea annexation that went counter to the Western concerns and interests, NATO has not attacked Russia in any way, shape, or form. So it's not a real existential threat to Russia that is driving this rhetoric. It's a signaling that Russia has no intention of fully freezing the conflict, and even if the combat is frozen, the political influence and the economic and social influence and the active measures by Russia will remain its priority in the region. In other words, it still views Ukraine as a stepping stone towards a potentially greater influence and interference in European and Western affairs. That is why it does not wish to see foreign troops stationed in Ukraine. It also wishes to leave the door open to the possibility of unfreezing the conflict at the time of its own choosing when it is ready to do so, which underscores the concerns by the critics of the security guarantees being discussed by President Trump and the European leaders, which do not have any serious way of holding Russia to its word of not reprising its attacks on Ukraine at some future moment in time. There is really no way that anyone
Okay,
can guarantee this.
Lavrov also, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said Ukraine's allies are working on robust security guarantees to ensure Russia will never again try to take 1 square kilometer of Ukraine. Do you think such pledges are credible?
So I think that's the only way to do that is to essentially for Russia to stop being Russia. In other words, uh, for its internal security and geopolitical doctrine to change completely. I do not see that happening without its security services, which are the ones really driving the politics, being fully unraveled and rebuilt from scratch, or Russia being broken up in multiple states that cannot in fact, um, drive this sort of doctrine due to lack of
Got your
shortage
point.
of
Trump
resources.
initially floated NATO like US security guarantees for Ukraine. But Lavrov insists Russia itself must be one of the guarantors. How do you see this clash of visions playing out at this moment?
The only security guarantee that would actually work was for Ukraine to join both the European Union and NATO as soon as possible. That would at least because the European Union also actually has its own security structure similar to Article 5, but unlike Article 5, it's binding and mandatory. So NATO, if a member state is attacked, in theory, the entire alliance should come to its assistance, but that assistance European Union is attacked, the European Union as a whole has to come to its defense. The problem, of course, the European Union does not have a collective army, and that too is only a limited guarantee from a practical standpoint. Now, some of the states at least advancing their own military preparation, but in reality, nothing isn't 100% guaranteed so much as Russia remains on its path to aggression. The only thing for these countries to realize is the Ukraine is a buffer against their own intervention, and even that is failing. Russia is increasing its asymmetric warfare inside Europe and
Okay,
elsewhere.
with Trump stepping back and insisting on a bilateral meeting first, and Lavrov demanding a fixed agenda before Putin sits with Zelensky, are we essentially stuck in diplomatic limbo, or do you see a realistic sequence emerging for talks?
The only realistic sequence for talks would be for Russia to agree to an immediate ceasefire before any diplomacy progresses. The fact that they have continued aggression against Ukrainian civilians and not just the military before, during, and after the meeting with Trump shows that they're not currently serious about reaching any sort of agreement, and whatever they do reach would be entirely self-serving and irrevocable at a moment's notice. After all, Russia has a record of breaking international agreements. What would be different about a deal struck with Trump without any cohesive measures to hold Russia to its word, meaning stopping any aggression before any sort of agreements and discussions could proceed? This would be a waste of time that would only play to Russia's strengths and and its propaganda value without giving anything of value to Ukraine and to Europe.
That was Irina Tuskerman, the political researcher. Thank you very much for your valuable, informative knowledge and insights and your time. This was In Focus. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.